Thank you. Chairman French Hill, Ranking Member Maxine Waters, and members of the House Committee on Financial Services, thank you for inviting me to participate in today's important hearing. I want to use my opening statement to shine a light on an issue that impacts millions of Americans. Small businesses are the heart of the American economy. Companies between 5 to 500 employees create 64% of all jobs in America every year. If you take into account their use of supply chains to distribute their goods and services, they may be responsible for over 70% of all jobs created. Yet, when we create policy, small businesses are often forgotten, and instead we dole out billions of dollars to the S&P 500 companies who rarely have problems accessing capital. As an advocate for small business, I see this as a gross miscalculation of resources and undermines a growing and competitive economy, which we all want. Affordability is one of the biggest challenges facing small business today and the millions of people they employ. A large portion of increased input costs are the result of radical changes in tariff policy. For decades, tariff policy has been designed to be reciprocal. For example, if a European country imposes a 10% VAT tax, value-added tax, on American goods and services, traditionally they would have a 10% tariff imposed on their goods sold in the U.S. Over the last 9 months, the administration has elected to use tariff policy as a political tool. I am not opposed to this. I am on the record suggesting a 400% tariff on China until they comply with the rules of the WTO that they entered into in the year 2000, and to provide protection for IP ownership like mine, along with resolving a long list of other grievances held against the CCP. The U.S. is still the world's largest and most successful consumer economy, so the Chinese have no option but to deal with U.S. demands. However, implementing punitive tariffs on other friendly nations and leaving them in place indefinitely has had an impact on American families, their businesses, and their customers. When tariffs are used for political leverage, the tariff percentages could change dramatically from day to day during negotiations. For example, the U.S. initially had imposed a 39% tariff on Swiss imports, but the tariff rate eventually landed at 15%. During the brief period of instability, which has only been months, most businesses simply absorbed the cost increases and refrained from passing them on to their customers. However, some businesses cannot do this indefinitely and may need to adjust their selling prices up in order to stay in business. I suggest that the current tariff policy needs some, as I call it, fine-tuning. The main issue is this: why levy tariffs on scarce goods and services? For example, farmers need potash to fertilize crops. Why put a 25% tariff on potash when there's not enough in the U.S. to begin with? The same could be said for low-supply commodities such as bauxite, aluminum, and softwood lumber. The Trump administration has already taken a step in this direction. Last November, the president signed an executive order reducing tariffs on crops that are difficult to produce in the U.S., such as coffee, tea, and tropical fruits, such as bananas and mangoes. Housing affordability is a pain point, and it's almost in every state. A major issue, as you just heard from Brian beside me here, is permitting. One glaringly obvious problem is Los Angeles. If you believe the deficit, as Brian mentions 5, Goldman Sachs out there with 3 million deficit of houses, there are tens of thousands of homes that were burnt down to the ground in LA recently, and virtually zero reconstruction has commenced. Why? This is due to antiquated regulations and bad policy. This is a self-inflicted wound and needs to be resolved immediately. Also, providing more federal and state land to build housing on will also increase supply and enhance affordability. Another policy I want to address involves the digital asset ecosystem. In 2025, the GENIUS Act was enacted, modernizing U.S. payments and settlement systems by establishing a clear regulatory framework for the operation and issuing of stablecoins. Many small businesses, notably the ones I've invested in as well, are interested in using stablecoins to reduce transactional costs. In fact, they could bypass credit cards that cost them 2.5%. However, for stablecoins to reach their full potential, comprehensive digital asset marketing structure legislation like the Clarity Act must also be enacted. Without clear rules of the road, digital assets, including stablecoins, cannot fully recognize their potential. The Senate is currently debating the Clarity Act, with one of the key issues centering on paying interest on stablecoins. The hallmark of the American economy has never been more about regulation, and really, it should be about innovation. Enacting the Clarity Act will enhance efficiency in the financial services sector and help reduce transactional costs and free friction up.
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
We look forward to the question period.